So good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the CQI Deming Special Interest Group interview series, Amplify. Today, we are discussing improving the way we approach transformation and improvement with Dr. Mustafa Shraim.
Hello, thank you, Chris.
In this interview series, we seek to bring the insights of Dr. W.E. Deming to the floor, where we, sort of discuss and elaborate on the practices for the benefit of the quality profession. So now that I've done this opening sort of introduction, let's get into the interview. I need to get our pictures right. This is it. Great. So today, I'm really excited about this interview. Again, you were recommended highly by Kelly Allen of the Deming Institute for us to actually have this sort of conversation and discussion on improving the way that we actually approach improvement and transformation of the organization. So we normally open with just a little brief introduction for you to tell us a little bit about Mustafa Shraim and give us a little insights as to your background and how you became involved in the work of Dr. W.E. Deming.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. And so again, my name is Mustafa Shraim. I currently teach at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And so I teach courses in the College of Engineering, the Department of Engineering Management kind of things, quality, leadership courses. And so, and I do also some consulting, especially in the summer, available for me as I don't teach in academia in the summer. But so as many of us, like I was a quality engineer. And before that, when I was doing my master's degree in industrial engineering, I, of course, got to know about Dr. Deming. I had not met him in person, but I had to learn his work. And the first thing that really struck me about what I learned about Deming was the concept of variation and SPC charts, process behavior charts, and things like that. So you can say that I came in to knowing more about Dr. Deming from the variation point of view. And I learned all the other management, about the management methods of his later on in life. So I thought that was it for him. He was only in statistical process control, variation, and things like that. And come to learn later on, maybe like a decade later, that he had all these, management methods and things like that. So I started getting more involved in it, and met Kelly in Columbus in the 90s, and he introduced me more to Deming and also the W. Edward Deming Institute, the Deming Institute. And so I learned a lot more, and I started contributing more, papers, published a couple of papers on the Deming methods. One of them, along with Kelly, we had one paper on the challenges of managers using the Deming lens. So that was one of the things, and involved also in the podcast and in their seminars, as a panelist, and just help once in a while.
Awesome. Sounds like we have similar journeys.
Yeah.
So why do you believe that Deming is so relevant to improving the way we think about and improve and approach transformation and improvement? Why do you think that Deming is still so relevant to today's practice?
Well, the way I think about it is that Deming has a more of an integrated kind of system, and not a la carte kind of things. If you want this, and you go get that. And so he has an integrated system that includes all aspects of making the environment of the work better for the employees. And things are very clear for everybody. So operational definitions and things like that. And energizing employees to be active and contributing and improving the performance of the company, not only themselves to start with, so they have to transform themselves first, but then actually being happy and have joy in their work, getting things done for the company. So to me, it's, you know, getting away from the sub-optimization and me kind of first into an integrative system with managing the connection. And now it's a we kind of concept where you have a lot of emphasis on the system, and it's the connectivity or the connectedness of the system components together, and not managing like in silos, which currently what typical companies do in the world, not only in the Western country. Of course, Dr. Deming was a little more, had more emphasis on the Western style of management, but as you know, Western style of management is prevailing in many places on earth. It's not only in the Western country, it's kind of, people come to business schools in Western countries and take that kind of knowledge back to where they're from.
It's one of the prime exports of the Americans.
Right.
Deming often used to say, import anything but American management.
Right. Exactly.
But
Yep.
one of the things that you started the conversation with was the whole question of SPC. And, you know, quite often in the quality practice, we get caught up into the tools. You know, we talk about SPC, we talk about PDCA, you know, managing variation, reducing variation, or even trying to eliminate variation, even when it is possibly impossible to actually eliminate. So there's quality professionals, we have a huge tool belt of improvement methods, techniques, approaches. You know, what makes Deming different? You know, does applying Deming mean that I have to throw away the tool belt, or does it mean that I have to better apply these tools in the context of knowledge? And when we talk about knowledge here, we're really talking about profound knowledge, that insight that comes from profound knowledge. How do you see, you know, Deming being different? What is really the unique differences in the Deming approach? Is it just a tool belt approach? Is it what really is the system of profound knowledge from your perspective?
Well, as you know, the system of profound knowledge has 4 components or 4 pillars, and they all kind of work together. It's not, and if you go actually in one, like I told you, I went through into the variation part, but then I discovered that variation is connected to other components of that system. It's actually easy to see how they are related when you try to enter. So I call them doors. You know, you can enter the systems door, and the psychology door, the variation door, or the theory of knowledge door, but you end up knowing all the others because they're kind of connected with one another. And if you try to manage things right, then you end up doing it right. It might take you a little bit more time to find out the other components in the system if you don't get, like, for example, educated on it and go through the training, the 2.5-day or 4-day workshops that you know Dr. Deming used to have, and all of that. You don't have that transformation, you end up getting there probably pretty slow. You end up recognizing that these things are really working together. So to me, the variation part really is a very powerful way of getting into it. It's all about managing variation. So as you know, you have variation. If you don't use some kind of a filter to see what's special and what's common, you end up, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like looking at.
You end up overreacting and tampering with your system.
Right. I mean, we see it every day in performance appraisal or given bonuses and things like that, just reacting to simple common cause variation because you don't see it in the context of the system. You don't really look at the data over a period of time to see how things, whether they are all common cause variation, which means that it's just a little variation between, over time that is caused by the system and not the person themselves. Once in a while, you get a special cause. So the special cause could be, and it's called special because it's special to something. It's assigned to a special cause. It's assignable. It could be a machine, right? It could be a new employee that did not get enough training, and all of a sudden you get that point up there above the upper control limit or below the lower control limit of that control chart, which indicates that there is something special going on here. Not special that it's good, but it's special like it could be good, it could be bad. It doesn't mean that if it's special, it's all bad, as we know. But you have to study it. You have to study it. You have to remove that. Or if it's good, you have to build a new system that goes around that kind of process that you want. So the special causes, most of the time, they're not good, right? It's just an interruption in the process. So you have to kind of remove them from the system. So when they come in from like a loophole in the system, and then you take it and you make it a controllable kind of part of the system. So it shouldn't come back again if you make it a controllable part of the system, or controlled part of the system. And of course, so you stamp out the fire basically as it comes up. Eventually, you're going to have a stable system, only the common cause remaining in it. And when you have a only common cause, then that's when you have, like, if you want to reduce it, you have to think about getting people involved, think about all the causes, root cause analysis, and things like that to tighten that variation. Because it's all about, then with common causes, it's all about tightening that variation over time and not eliminating. You're always going to have variation, right? But tightening the variation will become the aim at that point.
Segue into a critical sort of question also, just also to even think about it. I think when we think about Dr. Deming, everyone says system, and just even the word system, they could mean different things,
Right.
and the understanding of system. So could you just elaborate a little bit more in terms of just for the understanding of, those who may not really have that sort of insight and touch with Dr. Deming as to what system, because even variation itself is a system of variation.
Right.
So
the system, it could be anything, right? It could be, so you have to define it. You have to put the boundaries around the system that you're talking about. So you can't just say, well, imagine the system. What system? And when you talk about system, what is the aim of the system? So you have to, first of all, define it with, what are the boundaries of that system? And then also define the aim of your system. For example, I can say that in my classroom could be by itself a system, right? And my aim would be to improve the learning, right? And, improve also the teaching that on my part as well. So that's a system, and it has components in it. It has, you have customer requirements, customer expectations, which could be the students in terms of class. It could be also a customer for a company. So if you think of a company as a system, you have different components in it. You have sales, you have production, you have engineering, You have customers and suppliers, you have employees, right? In general, you have all these components, you have human resource and training, you have all kinds of stuff that is going on in the company. So, and there is an aim, there's always an aim. You have to have an aim of the system. Otherwise, as Dr. Deming said before, there is no system, there is no aim, there is no system. So you have to have an aim, otherwise there is no system. So for example, the aim of a company is to provide certain solutions, certain to solve customers' problems, you know, in certain area to make it maybe more open for innovation. So you don't like have a tunnel vision about that you are going to be producing certain products and that's it. You want to open it up for people to get engaged and coming up with ideas for innovation. So that's how so the system is just, you know, boundaries and aim that defines the system. The system has components, they have to work together and not in silos. So for example, if I demand 20% reduction in each of the departments in their budget, that's working in silo. Because each department, then they will have to provide that kind of cut in their budget. So what happens to purchasing? You know, purchasing start thinking about, okay, we have to cut 20%. Let's buy this kind of material and not that because it's cheaper. Because they have to fit within the new budget expectation. As a result, if the material is substandard, it goes to production, you're not getting the product that you were aiming for or expecting. Customer is not going to be happy. You were happy inside for a little while because you reduced the cost a little bit, or maybe you also fired a couple of people here and there and made it more, made more the current budget achievable. But in the long run, it's not going to help. Maybe you cut training, right? We talk about training and all of that, how important it is. Many times I've seen companies cut training programs altogether. Not only reduce training, but cutting it out altogether. So that's, you know, how I look at systems and try to manage the expectations between departments, that connection. So you have to manage those connections between departments. For example, the connection between purchasing and production, the connection between engineering and production, the connection between sales and purchasing. There's all kinds of connections there that you have to manage. And so you have to look at the next step and the preceding step. So if I am a step in the process, I have to look what is somebody expecting from me downstream. I'm providing a report. You know, if I make it more clear, maybe they don't have a lot of questions. They don't wait for me to come and explain it to them. Somebody's giving me something, I have expectations of it. For example, my students, they give me their work. My expectations should be very clear to them. Sometimes they're not. You know, I'm not saying that I'm, you know, that the person who doesn't. I'm always like trying to improve, trying to figure out what I did wrong and try to operational definition. We talk about operational definition. I try to define what my expectations are. So everybody is clear. So clarity is very important. And I see it everywhere that people don't know what to do and they just go under the radar because they don't understand what's going on. They have no clarity in the definition.
Yeah, so if I summarize, I heard so for systems, it must have an aim. We must identify the boundaries. We must understand that it's not separate parts, but parts also that are interdependent. Both they may be independent, but still dependent and interdependent on each other. there are boundaries to the system, or what some people like to call today scope. So the system has a scope, you know, in terms of the boundaries that it goes beyond the stakeholder requirements and expectations that it's expected to meet. I heard also that within the system, there are synergistic relationships that exist. And we must be clear throughout that, through every step in the system and every step in the process as to what the requirements of the next person in the system is, and possibly even the person before in the system. We must understand their requirements. So there's like a certain degree of co-creation that has to happen all throughout the system in order for us to have the value, the profound value that we really want to have. All right. Because I wanted to contextualize that because I know today we're discussing improving the way that we approach improvement and the many methods and options, because we know that we have a lot of cookbook methods. You know, we have, whether it be a lot of methods with promises that, oh, overnight, instant pudding, you know, you implement these steps, you save your organization, you know, we have zero defects, we have Six Sigma, we have Lean Six Sigma, we have 10 steps to utopia methods all over the place, you know. Are these good or bad, you know, as they say, or are they, you know, all bad in its context? You know, what are your thoughts on how do these apply in the context of the Deming lens, especially the Six Sigma?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a lot, as you know, there is a lot of criticism of Six Sigma. Of course, it has flaws, Six Sigma method, and it's the variation part, that plus or minus 1.5 standard deviation. So the pure Six Sigma is, I guess it's okay, but it's still, you know, I mean, you could be off target and have a Six Sigma performance. You could be way off target and have Six Sigma performance, depending on where you put where your specs are, I guess, in the process. But in general, people right now with methods like this are looking at savings. That's their objective. So they're not really looking even at variation. So that variation is all gone. I mean, they talk about it in the training and things like that. But now the boss wants to see, you know, they invested in you, right? They invested in you. Now they want to see what you can bring back. So your expectation is in terms of dollars.
Cutting costs, cutting costs.
Cutting cost, right? I mean, you do a project, I want you to save me $30,000 or $50,000 per project. All right. So you start looking around and just making all kinds of efforts to be creative about where you find the money to save. So management by objective is a big part of, and management by numbers is a big part of current Six Sigma. And it's because it's an investment that the company has to pay, and they want to see their money back. And, you know, people also are attracted to it to become certified, to have a belt just in case they leave the company, they have training. So it's all about that complexity of it. Plan, do, study, act. I can do any project and plan, do, study, act, and deliver all kinds of, you know, results. I mean, it's a beautiful kind of, you know, basic tool or basic continuous improvement method to use. That's also you can go in cycles and make a few cycles. And for example, in Six Sigma, you go and control. So you control your thing, and then that's it. The project is over. So there is no that kind of continual improvement kind of cycle that is embedded in it. I disagree with it from the statistical flaw that is in it. And the statistical flaw, by the way, it's all about that 1.5 standard deviation. So if your process shifts, so what Six Sigma is saying in their theory is that the process is going to be changing over time, about 1.5 standard deviation. But if you have the same control limits and you change process over time by 1.5 standard deviation, you will have a lot of points above the upper control limit and below the lower or below the lower control limits, depending on where the change is going. The change going up or the change going down. So that's one for the other thing for me is the objective of saving money, putting people in fear of on their job if they don't deliver the expectations for a project. So that's another issue with it. As far as lean is concerned, you could have also similar things. So if lean is not tied to quality, it's dangerous, especially when you start getting people from outside and you try to impose certain targets on people inside, work faster, do things differently, and all of that when people are not even ready for that. So those
Also,
are now.
so also getting for you that measurement is not necessarily bad unless it starts being used as a target or the objective, then the measurement loses value.
Right.
So the measurement is really about learning and improving.
Right.
If you have to do measurement at all, it's about and you require the lens of understanding and appreciating variation.
Right.
Yeah. So I know you have been helping a lot of organizations working to apply the system of profound knowledge. You know, what has that experience been like working with these organizations, considering, you know, all of this broad context that you have already mentioned? You know, what are some of the challenges, you know, in helping persons to come to that understanding that there's no instant pudding, you know, it's not just about the economics of it, because you could actually improve one part of your system and destroy the overall system, destroy the whole, as you were mentioning just now. You know, so how do we build the mindset of the leadership to not just look at the short-sightedness, the short-termism, and basically unpack all of these challenges that you have been mentioning throughout the conversation?
Right, like you just mentioned, I mean, people want something very fast. They want something, they want improvement, right? They're looking at the short-term earnings, for example. They want something that is going to give them payback as soon as possible. So that's, to me, is one of the big obstacles of implementing the Deming management method. The other one, and those are, you know, a part of that Deming's diseases of management, right? He mentions that. He mentions like a performance appraisal and rewards and looking at things from the numbers point of view and comparing people, even though they come from the same population, you know, as this is good and this is bad, by drawing a line in the middle and say, all the people above this line, which is a target line, are going to get bonus. All people below are not. The red bead, you know, experiment kind of mentality. It's a system. You're actually evaluating the system, but you're just seeing the people in front of you and trying to punish and, you know, carrot and stick kind of things. So to me, the performance, the rewards, and the performance appraisal, and the ranking, and misinterpreting variation is the biggest obstacle that we have in any company. This is like when Dr. Deming identified it as a disease, I see why he identified it. You have to get rid of that. It is hard because it's embedded. It's a part of culture of companies and organizations and universities and all of that.
It's shared as best practice. It's incorporated into excellence frameworks. Persons are doing the wrong things and embedding it into evaluation tools. And then they say, well, oh, you're doing the wrong thing right, man. You're doing that wrong thing right.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're recycling stuff and from the past and that probably worked out in sports, and they try to rank everything else just like that. Sports, you go into it, you know that you're going to either lose or win. You're fine with it. It's different. So, I mean, I see it all the time. We see it in our, for example, we're talking about the scholarships in our, in ASQ, providing scholarship awards to people who, apply. So they apply, they write an essay, and then you read it. You have judges, you go through it, and you go through that process. It's still very hard for them because it's really very hard to distinguish between people, and you don't know even who wrote what in terms of essays. And then you give it to somebody. What about the other people? They have worked so hard on it. Okay. Now, if other people, if you tell them, okay, if you qualify, if you're a student, if you submit this, then you are qualified, you can put your name in a hat, and then we pull one out of a hat. It's fine. As a lottery, after you qualify, after you are eligible for it, it's fine if everybody knows that. But to try to compare between people, you have a lot of biases also from the judges. I like one area, one topic versus another. So how do you deal with that? And we give awards based on that. Think about all the awards that you get. That you receive.
Better you say it's a lottery.
So these are the things that are very hard to change. It's very hard to change, and it takes a lot of emphasis on this. Maybe, as Dr. Deming said, you need the critical mass to think the same way we think. For example, to change something, like to get rid of performance appraisal, right? You have enough people in the company to believe that in the same way, of getting rid of it. If you do, then yeah, it is possible, unless of course the big boss, wants to get rid of it.
So there's a lot of education and training is where you begin to unpack these issues. Sometimes right. I've found that sometimes you can't really just confront it. You also have to bring out and use sometimes the same numbers and so on to show what is not working about some of these practices, rather than I found it extremely difficult to
it is extremely difficult. It is when you mention something like this to people, they say, what? Oh, we can't get rid of these awards. You crazy? They don't want to get rid of them. It's a part of the culture. Giving awards is just a part of the culture. One time I went to a school awards ceremony, and I think it was like middle school. And then by the time they finished giving awards, everybody got awards except for like 2 kids. Do they think about that? Like, you're giving awards and these kids are sitting down and, not recognize them? You think it was only their fault not getting an award? It's a system that is, making all of these decisions and determinations.
So I do know that you mentioned earlier in the conversation the whole concept of the PDSA cycle. So when it comes to embarking on the improvement journey from the Deming lens or the transformation journey, are PDSA cycles the be-all and end-all of the Deming lens, what lessons can you share in effective application of PDCA or theory of knowledge, or anything from the system of profound knowledge that would be helpful for our audience?
Right. So the PDSA is just a great tool because you can use it for small things that you want to just go through quick process and maybe a prototype and get things done quickly. You can also use it for bigger projects. And so for example, I used it in trying to emphasize the use of PDSA in going through our labs and at the university. So I wanted to show that going through a couple of cycles of PDSA can give you great improvement in the process. So what we did was we did a design of experiment. So the plan, do, study, act, luckily, fits very well with planning the experiment, designing it, and then doing it, and then collecting the data, analyzing it, and then studying the results, and then acting on it. So the first time around was, okay, we have so many factors we wanted to study in the process. So we took all of these factors, and then we did the first experiment, which was more like a screening type of experiment. We wanted to see which factors were important, and which ones were not. So at the end of the first cycle, we came up with what? With a few factors that were important. The others were not. So the factors that were not, I can now manage them at the best economic level that they should be set at. For example, if I have two types of materials and they both gave me the same results, I'm going to go for the one that is more economically feasible for the company, right? If I have two temperatures and both of them gave me the same thing, I'm going to go with the lower temperature because that's lower energy. So the first part, we got rid of many factors. We said, okay, we can set it, the ones that are not important on the best economic levels, and the ones that are important now, we took another cycle of the PDSA to optimize the setting of the process, because those were important. So you have to be careful about where you set your factors at, or the parameters at. And so this is one example of PDSA. Just use it to improve the process. You can study the process. So for us, we did the study first, and then the second cycle was improved. So we used 2 cycles. Of course, you can use 1 cycle as you wish. There are so many ways of using the PDSA, and in projects, for example, in teaching, when you have students do projects, they can do PDSA. I came up with in teaching, came up with something called practice for students. So I give them a problem and they go and try to solve it. There is no penalty of getting it wrong. So what happens, you submit the first try, you have to give it, just try to figure it out, right? Once you turn it in, then we'll go over it together in class and we'll give more input. I actually have somebody solve the problem in the front of the students or answer most of the questions. And then once that's done, they go back and update what they have submitted the first time around. So what that does is, and they have to do a reflection. Okay, what did you do wrong the first time? And how do you feel now? Do you feel like you understand the concept? You can do it again. You can teach it next time. in class. So, so these are the kind of plan, do, study, act. You can do it like in a simple as a homework assignment or a school assignment. You can do it for process improvement and at at your work. You can do it on all kinds of things. You can expand it. You can shrink it to fit your needs. So it's a beautiful thing to do, especially the study part. And now the study, you try to use things like control charts to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I do see that, yes, plan, do, study, act is definitely a powerful tool, and it's even more powerful when we understand the context in which it could be properly utilized, and
Right.
we also implement it in systemic ways rather than some of the anti-systemic ways, dedicated to learning, and brings together all of the different players in the system that is impacted by the system in itself. So you also keep coming back to this whole concept of system. It just keeps coming back over and over in the conversation, system. And as you know, we talk about the system of profound knowledge. So what makes system of profound knowledge so important for leaders and quality professionals to possess? And could you provide any sort of guidance as to how to develop this profound knowledge? I could tell this is like, for me, in my instance, I'm still developing it. I'm still looking constantly to develop it. So share some insights as to how do you develop this system of profound knowledge?
Well, as Dr. Deming said, this is, it starts with the individual transformation, right? So you're not going to really use it unless you really understand it and start, and then you don't go back. It's not a matter of, okay, now this is not working, I'm going back to the old ways of doing things, because so that's not really transformation. So if there is no transformation, I don't believe you'll be able to work with it. You have to have individual transformation. And once you have individual transformation, then you will be able to transform the organization, have influence on others, try to make them understand what's going on, have training for them, like, the Deming Next or the Deming workshop, the 2.5-day workshop or 2-day workshop. And sometimes it just doesn't click the first time around. Some people had that. I don't know if I mean, it just, why do I have to go against the flow? I'm happy with in my company, and just doing the good, the old ways of things, and awards and managed by numbers and all of that stuff, and everything is okay. Why do I have to do that? So if you don't see the need, if you don't see the problems that come from the current or the prevailing style of management, it's going to be hard for you to transform. You got to see what kind of issues. So I believe that the first thing to do is to recognize the problems that come from the prevailing style of management. And then you will be, you'll have that kind of motivation to change, to make the change. And you don't have to be expert in all of these 4 components, right? I mean, you have knowledge about variation, it's fine, it's good to distinguish between the two. And you have a theory of knowledge, you have a PDSA, operational definitions, and all of these things, just some knowledge. Psychology, psychology is very important, and how people get affected by the style of management. People are not engaged because of the style of management they have. And actually you have looked at numbers for people being disengaged, not even not engaged, disengaged, meaning that They don't want anything to do with what's going on in the company. And some people are just not engaged. They do their little thing as little as possible and they go home. They satisfy the requirements and then they go home. They're not engaged in the work. They don't improve. All of these things, they have to be there before you make an improvement, before you. And as you probably know, because you're on this journey, we're always on the journey, right? Where it never ends because you're always learning something. I mean, how many times you look at this book and discovered something new, right? In it.
Every day.
Every day. I was reading something before, this morning. I was thinking, I've never seen it. I probably read it before, but this is like, every time it just clicks and adds to that level of comfort you have with this kind of system.
Yeah. So I appreciate what you're saying sincerely, actually. Because like I said, it does begin with a personal and individual transformation. It does then also start with that commitment to develop yourself. And in the organization also is also a commitment to eliminate things that suck the joy out of wanting to be at work and joy of life. Because
Right.
sometimes you start to recognize that people are not just coming to work, they're trying to live their life, they're trying to earn a living, they're also trying to balance their life at home, their livelihoods that, in probably other spaces and their own difficulties and challenges. They talk about the psychology piece and all of that. So the more that you learn and the more that you suck these things that rob people of joy of work and joy of learning and help persons appreciate the value of learning in the workplace, everywhere, value of learning and how that learning also shapes the innovation and change and improvement that we all see. I think that actually then stimulates others to say, well, oh, what is that stuff that you are on that we are not on, and influences others to wanna to also partake, rather than mastering what does not help improve. And I think because they keep mentioning, there are a lot of things in the organization to me that rob people of that joy of learning, as you would know, that joy of work,
Right.
that pride in workmanship, so
And
I
fear, from the workplace, fear is a big factor. People don't try to come up with anything new because they're fearful of doing the wrong thing or getting reprimanded for doing something they're not supposed to do. So they just, just go under the radar. They don't experiment. They don't do anything. They don't suggest. Just go about their life with as minimum input as possible. So
so what key takeaways would you leave the audience? How would you inspire persons to bring back this joy in their own, transformation, and then to help to transform the organizations they're in, and possibly even transform the society that you live in? Because these days, transformation of the society, we on a big journey with regards to, we'll hear things about net zero, sustainability. We will hear the need to decarbonize our economies. We will hear about disaster risk reduction. We will hear about climate change and trying to tackle all of these big issues, these big meta issues that sometimes companies were just concerned with. Oh, I'm just here to make money, and
Right.
and so on. I'm not here to really be engaged in all of that that stuff, that social stuff and political stuff and all of that sort of thing. So how does the Deming lens help us now to navigate these systemic challenges? And what
Yeah,
key
I mean,
takeaways?
these are huge challenges, right? So it's hard to think about the big picture But I think, to me, I have my own system I can control, so I'm gonna start there first, right? Even in your personal life, Chris, you probably do this on a daily basis. Was thinking one time about how you deal with your children. Like, for example, if everything your child does, then you say, "Oh no, don't do that," or "Do this." "Oh yes, do that." You're trying to tamper with their behavior, and instead of like giving them guidance in the long run about what to do and what's good and what's not good, you're trying to tamper with everything. So you're gonna start hiding and doing whatever they want, because if they do it in front of you, they expect you to react immediately to it. So from your personal life on, you just have to be open, be clear about what you want, be authentic, trustworthy, all of these good things, you start with them. And for technical stuff, or for your organization to improve, I usually bring up the Deming's chain reaction model. I've probably seen it, like it says, improve quality, right? And because you improve quality, then your mistakes are going to be reduced. You have better use of your equipment and all of that. And then that improves productivity. And then you be competitive and you provide more jobs. What happens now in many organizations, they go and say, "I want to improve productivity." So just jump to the productivity box right away without going and slowly trying to work on quality, like operational definitions, training, having people experiment with things and do all of these things to improve quality. They just jump to the objectives of productivity. I want you to have 1,000 pieces a day from this product, regardless of what method you use. You can dance, you can do all kinds of stuff. I want you to produce 1,000 units. So it really depends, but you got to start somewhere. And I think you start from your personal life, from you as a person, whatever you can control, whatever system you can control. To me, in my classroom, my home, that's the first thing I would control. If I am consulting with a company, I'm going to try to influence as much as possible, right? So Deming said that you need the critical mass to change things, right? So for any organization, the critical mass is a bunch of influential managers. He gave a number, like a square root of, the size of the company. So if you have a company with, 25 people, then you need 5 people to be on board with this transformation to make it sustainable in the long run. And I think from the ground up, now you can't really build it from the World Health Organization position and go down, right? You got to build it from the ground up. If everybody is doing that kind of work, eventually we'll get somewhere.
Awesome. I think that insight is really totally awesome, in the sense that it comes back to being personal again also. So if anyone in the audience would have heard anything that they were felt that was interesting and they believe that they require support, coaching, mentorship, or advice from Mustafa, how do they contact you or contact your university to get that sort of support?
Yeah, so they can contact me via my email address. I have a university address is shraim@ohio.edu. It's my last name @ohio.edu. There is also, from the consulting perspective, I also have another email, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So reach out and can connect and have a conversation there as well. I'm not on too many social media stuff, so I try to minimize that. So keep my head up.
Don't worry. I think I beat you in one respect. I have LinkedIn and I have Facebook.
Yeah.
And I just have the Facebook for watching the news and following like the Deming Institute and a couple of other colleagues from the Deming.
Right, right.
But like you know, it's not really social media sort of thing at the moment. But you know, I guess all of us have different purposes to the use of social media. So
Right.
but definitely well, it will be part of the recording, and we'll also try to share your profile information with the recording of the Amplify series today. So
Absolutely.
again, Mustafa, we really appreciate all of the insights that you have shared. They have again, you know, contributed to the process, helping us to understand that, you know, there's no instant pudding as it relates to improving and transformation. It is a journey, it is a process. We need to drive out fear, we need to return joy in work. You know, these things may sound simple and trivial, but these are not the prevailing style of management. And because of that, you know, it is a journey. We do have to recognize that and appreciate systems and that interaction in systems, that interdependence of systems. And when we talk about interdependence, we're talking about both parts of the system being both independent, but yet still interdependent on other parts.
Right.
So, and then cause and effect relationships, synergistic relationships. You have to consider all of these things when we think about systems. Of course, the system of variation. You know, so there's a great deal of complexity in, you know, probably explaining the system of profound knowledge also. And we understand that too. And I think that is also recognized in the presentation today. So we really want to appreciate and thank you for all of the insights that you shared, and you know, just even continuing to share this legacy of Dr. Deming with your students at Ohio State and
Ohio University.
yeah, Ohio
I
University. Sorry.
have to be careful here.
Ohio, and I should know better.
I'll be in trouble if I did not correct you. I have to correct you.
You know, but again, you know, just commending the work that you continue to do. I think I recognize by Kelly as one of the people to actually speak to in this series is, you know, in itself, you know, a testimony of, you know, your journey and so on. So we really do appreciate you having you on. And I don't think that this will be the last conversation that we'll have. We'll probably have something more focused in future to probably bring out some of these concepts, because again, as you said, this is a intense journey, and we're trying our best to also simplify the complexity for the audience and so on. So it is in fact a journey. So thank you again, Mustafa.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you, and hopefully we'll connect at some other point in the future.
No problem.